Ladies and gentlemen, please listen very carefully. The instructions are very important. You need a notebook, and you also need the Bill of Rights I handed to you about 2 weeks ago. It says the Bill of Rights and has all the other amendments on the other side. I told you to put it next to your Constitution and that you would be referencing them. This is one of the many times we will be referencing it. So please have it out on your desk. I would also have a highlighter on your desk. It will make today easier, more effective for you. On Friday, I gave every single person a highlighter. Sit down, dude. Sit down. You're the only one wandering around. You don't think that's weird?
No.
Hi, as you're the only one wandering around, you should think that's weird. Here we go. Today I'm teaching you the Bill of Rights and the key amendments that we will be discussing this week. Now please hear the words that are coming out of my mouth. You do not need to memorize all of the amendments this week. There are certain ones you have to memorize. So, with that being said, the first 10 you have to memorize. Sorry, my bad. However, the other ones you don't. On the top of your notes, write week 4. Write civil liberties and civil rights, please. Yes, ma'am. Huh? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to start with the Bill of Rights. Anyone else not have a Bill of Rights paper? Parker, got you. Okay. So we're going to start right at the Bill of Rights. Okay, because we're at civil liberties and civil rights. Okay, so the Bill of Rights are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. I would write that down. Okay. The Bill of Rights are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. They are in existence because who wanted them there? Who can raise their hand and recall content I've clearly taught you? Ty. Anti-Federalists. Anti-Federalists wanted them. Okay, so they're going to be signed into the Constitution and ratified by 1791. So just a little bit of background knowledge. Okay, now it is going to include, and I would write this down, civil rights and civil liberties. It includes civil rights and civil liberties. Okay. As soon as you have that down, stop and look at me so I know exactly where we are. Okay. Please listen very carefully. I am in no way going to make you write down a simple definition for all of the 10 Bill of Rights because you have a piece of paper that clearly writes the 10 Bill of Rights, yes? So there's no point doing something twice if we don't have to, yeah? So what I am going to tell you is when we are talking about extra stuff, okay? So I'm going to model it on the first one and then you're going to pull it through. So on your paper, ladies and gentlemen, you should, on this little, may I borrow for a sec? You need to keep this near your notes all week because it's a big deal, and this week is called Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, so of course we're doing the Bill of Rights. With that being said, I would highlight what I have up here. You need to know the First Amendment. So in the First Amendment, I would highlight where it says freedom of religion, speech, press, assembly, and petition. So on your little piece of paper, I would highlight those things. Okay. Now listen, on your notes, I would write First Amendment, just so you know what it is. And I would write the special stuff about the First Amendment that you need in your notes. Is everyone clear? So in order to study for your test on Friday, you should have your notes and... Yes. No, it's on Thursday. You have a test on Thursday. We don't move tests. Huh? We will never have a test on Friday. Nay, nay. Okay, so when we're talking about the Bill of Rights, ladies and gentlemen, and the First Amendment, here we go. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and assembly, and petition. An example of it, so I would write First Amendment in my notes, and I would write example, because we all know your test is definition, examples, yes? perfect example of it are protests. Specifically, they have to be peaceful. Okay, against the government. In the 1970s and the 1960s, people wore black armbands to school to protest the government. That has been supported by the United States government and protected and enshrined by a Supreme Court case. You don't need to know that case, but it is practiced. Okay, so in your notes, I would have example. It is limited. What does it mean to say a right has been limited? Luke? No, what does it mean to a right to be limited? Yes, you can't just say whatever you want. Okay? We know that's libel and salacious. Yes, you can't just make shit up. It is limited by the clear and present danger test. It is an actual thing that the Supreme Court measures. You absolutely need to know this. AP loves this stuff. The clear and present danger test. The most basic of examples is you can't go into a crowded room and scream bomb or fire or something like that if there isn't a bomb or a fire, because what will happen to all those people? Yeah, they're going to start trampling over each other and all that stuff. Okay? So, the clear and present danger test is if by you saying something, you trigger a dangerous response that is not protected by the Supreme Court. Okay, so you will be held in contempt of the law. Finally, inside our First Amendment right, there's an establishment clause. You need to know this. AP loves clauses. The establishment clause prohibits the state from creating a state church. Who can raise their hand and logically tell me why the Establishment Clause is located in our First Amendment? Come on. What do you got for me, Kate?
Because the First Amendment says that you can have freedom of religion.
Yes, freedom of religion is in the first. It's your First Amendment, right? So, of course, the Establishment Clause that says the state cannot form a church is in the First Amendment. You need to put a big star. This is the wall of separation between church and state. That is a huge American ideal. Now keep in mind, our founders across the board were Christians. Even though they were all Christians, did they choose a religion? No, because they wanted freedom of religion. And this wall of separation between church and state. Okay? So, the First Amendment, you need to know. You're an example of a protest that would be protected. You need to know the clear and present danger test by the Supreme Court, and you need to know the Establishment Clause. Everyone good? Perfect. Second Amendment, there's nothing special about it, so I'm just going to keep moving. Is everyone clear? Now, for your test on Thursday, you do need to know all 10 of your Bill of Rights. However, there's nothing really tricky unless I stop and go through. Is everyone clear? So your second Bill of Rights is the right to bear arms, your Second Amendment. So you should be highlighting that on your sheet because it says right to bear arms. Okay. Your Third Amendment right is no quartering of soldiers. Remember, the British did it to save money. Do it on your highlighted form so you can save time. Okay. Your Fourth Amendment. Alan, tell me what I'm doing. I don't have any time for you. I have pencils. Let me go in there if it doesn't happen. Okay. The Fourth Amendment is the protection of unreasonable search and seizure. So make that highlighting on your paper. Andres.
Do we have to know the militia part of the Second Amendment?
I just need you to write to know their arms. Form militia if you want it. Okay. So, the big thing about the Fourth Amendment is the exclusionary rule. So in your notes, you should be writing down exclusionary rule. Fourth Amendment, exclusionary. You need to know what specifics are going to which one. The exclusionary rule is finding illegal items cannot be used in court unless they were found with a warrant. Okay, let's clean up the language here. What's a warrant? Come on, we've all watched SVU. Come on now. Stabler, man. What a dream come true. Here we go. Lucas.
It's a document that a judge gives police to go search places.
Okay, so the police. Let me just tell you the basic criminal. Now, ladies and gentlemen, am I a lawyer?
No.
No, because would I be wearing Target clothing? Would I be standing in front of you? No, I'd be making lots of money somewhere else doing something fabulous in a fabulous outfit. Yes? Okay. So I'm not a lawyer, but I know how to pass this AP exam, so here we go. Okay? What happens is, if the police think that Parker has broken the law, they go to a judge and say, we believe Parker has done this. This is our evidence. This is our general thinking of how that crime was committed. The judge hears the evidence, takes whatever intent that they have created and justification, and the judge decides whether they have the right for a warrant or no. If the judge says no, what do the police have to do?
No.
They can't do anything. They can either go and try to collect evidence, okay, or they can drop the case. But if the judge says yes to a warrant, then what do? They go and search for whatever evidence they believe Parker has in her house. Now, if they go to Parker's house because they believe Parker steals puppies, can you believe that? Parker steals puppies in her free time. They're convinced of it. They go to the judge, they get a warrant saying Parker steals puppies. She was seen with 15 puppies in her backyard. And that's enough to justify a warrant, so they show up to Parker's house. And inside the house, there are 17 puppies. Okay? However, inside the house, they also see stolen bags of cash from the bank robbery 2 weeks ago. So Parker not only steals puppies, but robs banks. How heartless. Okay? So, with that being said, the police cannot do anything about what? Yeah, they can't touch the cash. They can't do anything. They can't confiscate it. They can't touch it. Can they arrest her and charge her for the crime of robbing the bank?
No.
No, because they have to go and try to find video evidence or tie her cell phone pings to by the bank, and then they can get a warrant to come and look at the money. But if they're there for puppies, can they look at cash?
No.
No, that's exclusionary. You can only access the evidence for the warrant you have in hand. Lilith.
What if you see the cash? Can you not use that as evidence?
No, because you're already in the house under a warrant.
You just pretend that you didn't see it.
Okay, please listen very carefully, and I say this with kind of tongue-in-cheek. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't understand the nuances of it because, once again, not a lawyer. However, the Exclusionary Act, as AP needs you to know, is that if they're not there for a warrant for one crime, they cannot collect evidence for another crime. That's what I need you to know. Now, if we walk into Parker's house and there's just dead bodies everywhere, I think we would be very concerned. Mostly still for those puppies, because that's what we really care about. But mostly we would be kind of concerned about that. I don't know where that nuance kind of goes, because I am not a... Thank you. Emily.
So, like, if the cash had something to do with the puppies.
Yes, if it has something to do with the puppies. If it has puppy blood on it. They can be like, yes, if there's a puppy picture on the cash, they can say, oh my God, this is payment for a puppy or whatever. Yes, then they can deal with it. Okay, yes.
Is that the same if, like, you get pulled over, like, they see something offensive and they search your car?
They can't search your car unless you invite them to search your car.
What if they
Yes. Come on, guys. I can't be the only one who listens to Jay-Z. He made this very clear in his songs, okay?
What if it smells something?
They can, that's probable cause. If they smell something, it's probable cause. Guys, not a lawyer. Once again, I don't know if they see a wine bottle sitting next to you. Is that probable cause? They can actually, I don't know, okay? But AP needs you to know that. So sorry. All right. Any questions about exclusatory that will be on the AP exam and not a personal reference to anything else? They can't search your car unless they have a warrant. You can open your doors and let them search, but then you forfeit your rights to exclusionary rule and privacy. You can't do that. Like, my brother's a police officer. So if he comes in my house and sees stacks of cash all over my house all of a sudden that wasn't there the week before, because I invited him in my house, he now has probable cause that he could start investigating. Does that make sense? Hello? But if he's standing outside my house and looks in my closed windows, he can't break into my house, see the cash, and be like, oh, Samantha Bennett did it. Does that make sense? Okay? All right. 5, your Fifth Amendment. Your Fifth Amendment is protection against trial without indictment. Indictment means it being clearly stated what you did. Okay? Now, I am not trying to get up into all of the grill of Donald Trump and his Mar-a-Lago chaos. Can we agree? I don't care what team you are on for the Trump mess. It's a mess, yes? They even appointed a special counsel this past week. It's a mess. With that being said, when the FBI showed up to Mar-a-Lago, they had an official master of what they were going in for. Now, the FBI may or may not indict President Trump. If they indict him, which could happen this week, means they are pressing charges against Donald Trump, which means on a piece of paper, the government is outlining the evidence they have and the specific charges they're going after him. An indictment tells you exactly what the government is going after you for. That's what an indictment is. If you don't know that term, I would write it down. Yes, ma'am?
I was like doing like a vocab and
Yeah.
I was kind of confused on like
Sure.
the term self-incrimination.
Self-incrimination is going to come up with due process. Give me 2 seconds and I will happily do it. Okay, so trial without indictment. You cannot have. They are going to tell you what they're charging. They can't just pick you up from the street and be like, do you know what I have you for? And you're like, I don't know. And they're like, but do you know why I have you? And you're like, I don't know. They can't just hold you in a jail cell and say, we have you. They have to tell you. Double jeopardy means you can't be tried for the same thing twice. Okay? I can't go through a whole court and then get sued, go back into court 5 years later for the same thing. Self-incrimination, I can't report upon myself. This is why people plead the Fifth, right? Donald Trump just went through, toss in the box, went through his testimony. He said it like 500 times. The reason why you can say I plead the Fifth is so you don't get yourself in trouble. Now, that's not always the case, but that's the most recent example of it, yes? Okay, hello? And property seizure. The U.S. government can't take something from you and dangle it in front of you and say, if you want this back, tell me what I want to know. They can't do it. Okay? Yes.
So indictment is an official,
Document that says what you're being charged with. Okay. So, due process. This is special. Andrew, do better. I need you paying attention here. Due process are when citizens are protected from imprisonment on a trial. Okay? So, you cannot be thrown in jail until your trial. Okay? You cannot be. Now, here in the United States, the police have to collect evidence, bring it to a judge, and the judge says, okay, issue the warrant, go get it. Then you get put in jail, but the judge has already seen that there are things here. If you go to France and you make a stupid decision in France and get in trouble, they can arrest you and throw you in jail and then build a case against you. Do we see the reverse here? Here in the United States, you're innocent till? There you go. So that's what we're talking about, due process. You're innocent till proven guilty. You are allowed to be out and about until your trial, or unless you have held proof that you should not be out. Now, Miranda rights. Everyone has seen SVU, right? Olivia Benson, Stabler. Love it. You guys don't watch SVU? Okay, it's a little old for you, but it's amazing. It's so good. Oh my God, I'm obsessed. Anna, what are your Miranda rights? You have the right in the court of law. Yes! Your Miranda rights are a quick review of your Fifth Amendment rights. It is to remind people you don't have to say anything because you don't want to incriminate or self-incriminate. So, I Raise your hand if you're one of those people who gets nervous and just starts saying random chaos out of your mouth. I'm the only person in this whole room who just spews random chaos when they're super nervous. Okay, I feel like I'm surrounded by liars, but that's fine. Okay, when you're arrested, okay, some people just start saying crazy things, and that will be used against them in a court. When people have said something under incredible duress, incredible stress, or the police kind of trick them into saying something. Those types of things are against the law because of our Fifth Amendment, okay? You all have watched like some murder documentary by now, yes? Where the police are trying to set them up to like catch the guy in the room, and they're trying to do some shady shit, and then they're like, oh my God. It's all about Fifth Amendment, okay? So due process, you have the right to know what your crime is, you have the right to have all this information. Anytime it's typically a court case, it's typically your Fifth Amendment rights are being violated. So anytime it's dealing with court, I maybe write that down, it's typically your Fifth Amendment. Okay, Sixth Amendment is the speedy court case. These are things that the government has to do. These are the things that you are protected by. These are the things the government has to do. Maybe make a note of that somewhere. Your Sixth Amendment are the things the government is required to do. Fifth Amendment is what rights you have. The Sixth Amendment is the responsibility the government has. Right to a speedy trial. You can't be in jail for 6 years before trial. Okay. Right to be informed of charges. Right to be confronted by witnesses. Okay. Right to call witnesses. You get to have people to speak on your behalf. Those types of things, and a right to a legal counsel. None of this should be shocking. Yes. These are foundational components of our American criminal system. Seventh is right to a jury. Nothing here. Eighth is protection against excessive bail, excessive fines. By banning excessive fines and excessive bail, we're protecting who? Rich people or poor people?
Poor.
Poor. So we're trying to make sure the poor aren't being abused as well. Okay? Cruel and unusual punishment, fine. 9. Rights granted in the Constitution shall not infringe on other rights. So you can't have one right without another right. You're entitled to all the rights. And 10th, powers not granted in the federal government of the Constitution belong to the states or the people. Emily, I love it, by the way. Keep going on the mains. Go ahead. What, the PowerPoint? No. Because I don't want people to depend entirely on me. But you should be highlighting my notes. Do you have it? That's why I'm having you do that instead of you going through. Because I want to focus on this stuff. Does that make sense? Like the extra stuff. Now, I'm telling you, Emily, and everyone who is listening, I am not expecting you to know all the amendments. The first 10 you should be familiar with. Is everyone clear on that? The big ones. So far of the 10, what are the 2 big ones? No. The first is a big one, so I'd put a star next to that one. And Fifth Amendment are the 2 big ones, because we've spent the most time on them, yes? Hello? We did outside information for them. So Emily, if you were going to study 2 so far, I would do first and fifth. Okay? I don't need you to know everything about them, just have a guise about them. What do you got?
So for the 9th, our vocab said that they were enumerated.
Yes, because they're specifically mentioned within the Constitution and rights protected. Yes. No, they're explicit, they're enumerated.
So then this says not specifically.
So they're talking about
Either.
both, yeah.
Yeah.
They're talking about both,
So
explicit
enumerated.
and implied, yes, to a degree. They're talking about rights granted in the Constitution shall not be infringed on any other rights, which means it gives everyone equal access. You can't have one without the other, okay? So, 11. Now, underneath your notes, in your notes, put a big star. Okay? 11 through 27, which is what we are. We just finished the Bill of Rights, which were all signed into law in what year? 1791. So now we're in 11 through 27. They are going to come up as needed. and ratified. So 11 through 27 are going to come up and be ratified as needed. You will see as we kind of go throughout the rest of APGov, because we're not covering them all here, you will see that they come in clusters typically. Like after the American Civil War, we have 3 amendments that go on to the Constitution. In 1913, we have a fundamental shift in U.S. bureaucracy, which we're going to talk about in about 3 weeks. That we get 2 amendments strictly from. Does that make sense? So we're going to see these changes as they come. We are talking about civil rights and civil liberties today. We are not addressing every amendment. Is everyone clear? So if you were only paying attention to civil liberties and civil rights, you need to pay attention to amendment, okay, and we're going to hit 14 here in a second, okay? So, did you have a question, Nick?
I was gonna say, when was the last amendment done?
So we have had a ton of amendments die in the ratification process, which means some states signed it, some didn't. But in order to get through, you need 3/4 of it to get ratified. I think the last one was in the 70s or the 80s. It's been a long time. There's been a bunch that have died out there, but we almost got one through. The ratification almost restarted on the voting rights by John Lewis. One got kicked up a little bit, but it died once again. Okay, here we go. 11th Amendment. You should be on the back of your Bill of Rights. You'll notice those are there. This is not a civil rights one, but because the U.S. courts cannot hear cases and make decisions, we'll deal with this at another date. It's not on this week's test. 12 is about majority of electoral votes for the vice president. It's clearly not a civil rights. It's not on the test. 13 provides neither. Okay, this one is something you need to know. Okay, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. Write this down. Were all signed into law post-Civil War. 13th, 14th, and 15th are all signed into law post-Civil War. They are trying to give rights to more people here in the United States. Because right now, before the 13th Amendment, who are the only people voting?
White men.
White landowning men. So if you are a poor man, you're still not voting. Here we go. So the 13th Amendment, ladies and gentlemen, you need to know that slavery is abolished. That's the only thing I need you to know for the 13th. It's technically part of the civil rights because it's the first one to abolish it, but it's not a big one. It's just literally banning it. Keep in mind, how many times does the word slave come up in the Constitution?
No.
Technically one, because they say no slave anymore in the amendments. Okay? So, keep that in mind. 14th Amendment, ladies and gentlemen, this is a huge one. Here we go. 1st, 5th, 14th. Those are the big ones. Here we go. The 14th Amendment, okay, grants citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States, including former enslaved people, and guaranteed all citizens equal protection from the law. When you talk about the 14th Amendment, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things you need to know. Okay, so this is all about equal protections in front of the law. Okay. I'm giving you time to write it down before I tell you to write down the next one. Alright. You need to know, this is, put a big star. Most Supreme Court cases arguing for civil rights use what amendment? This one. So you need to know that.
Can you repeat what you just said?
Most civil rights cases in the Supreme Court argue the 14th Amendment. This is the most commonly one cited for civil rights issues. So, when gay, LGBTQ plus community was arguing in front of the Supreme Court for equality of marriage, what did they cite? 14th Amendment. So, this is what we're pulling from. Okay. You need to know Brown versus Board of Education. Brown versus Board of Education falls under the 14th Amendment. Who can tell me about Brown versus Board of Education? It's a big deal. Well, Kate, I love it. What do you got?
They argued that like separate but equal was a thing, and that like you could
Is a thing or is no, not a thing? This is in 56, by the way. So is it a thing or is it not?
The act decided to
It dismantles what?
okay, yeah, it dismantled the
Plessy versus Ferguson, which is the one you're
which
thinking
said
of.
separate week was
There you go. Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, write it down, says that there is no place for separate but equal in the Constitution. Inside Brown versus Board of Education, it says there is no place for separate but equal in the Constitution. Okay? They use the 14th Amendment to argue their case for equality in education. Ladies and gentlemen, without the 14th Amendment and the Brown versus Board of Education, we would not be amongst each other. You know that, yes? Okay? Depending on your race, depending on your sex, depending on your socioeconomic status, we would not be in the same room. 14th Amendment, has it had a big impact?
Yes.
Yes. Specifically, the 14th Amendment has been given the teeth it needs by the Supreme Court. Write it down. The 14th Amendment has been implemented because of Supreme Court cases. Write it down. Now, this is what is unique about America. We passed the 14th Amendment in 1867. However, what was starting to kick up at this time? Segregation, yes, because beforehand we had slaves and non-slaves. Now we have white people separated by black people, okay? So, the 14th Amendment was ignored for quite some time. No one really gave it any length or strength to it. It is because of Supreme Court cases, okay, and the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Write it down. The 14th Amendment gained strength because of Supreme Court cases like Brown versus Board of Education, and Congress passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, Emily, write it down. The Congress passing the Civil Rights Act of 1964 outlawed discrimination based on race, sex, religion, ethnicity. So, on its own, is the 14th Amendment strong enough to stand? No, it is not. The 14th Amendment only stands because the judicial branch, Supreme Court cases, and the legislative branch, via the Civil Rights Act of 1964, allow it to stand.
The legislative.
Yep. Legislative branch. Ladies and gentlemen, is our First Amendment right protected by two branches, or is it protected because it's in the document? It's protected because it's in the document. 14th Amendment is not protected just because it's in the document. We had to secure it with Supreme Court cases and all that. It's a little rough, yeah? Okay, now, something else you need to know. You need to know the term incorporation. When you're talking about the 14th Amendment, you are talking about the equality of people in front of the law. The 14th Amendment makes equality in the law both a federal problem and a state problem. Okay? Incorporation is the process of extending the protections of the Bill of Rights by means of the actions of state governments. What that means is, if it is a federal law, it has to be embraced by the states. So, if it is illegal to discriminate based on race, age, sex, gender, states now have to make it illegal to discriminate based on race, age, sex, gender. Right, Paula? So, incorporation means everyone has to be on the same side of it. Why? Why? What historically was happening after the American Revolution? Come on, Nick.
States arguments.
States' rights, and what was state right implementing in the South? That would be a huge problem to the 14th Amendment.
Is
Jim? Jim Crow laws. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's do a little history lesson, yes? We're a little weak on it. You may not enjoy it, but we're doing it. Okay, the American Civil War. The North wins. Spoiler alert. Okay, slaves are freed by the 13th Amendment. Okay, they're freed specifically by what document, Luke? Emancipation Proclamation. Takes about 4 years for it to actually ring true because Texas. Okay, with that being said, the 14th Amendment is going to pass during Reconstruction. During Reconstruction, the North is occupying the South. They are enforcing elections. They are making sure every vote is counted. For the first time in history. Alexa, off. I do have an Alexa. How strange. Alright, well welcome. Nice man. Okay, for the first time in history in the South, we are going to have black leaders in office elected by their peers. There will be more black people in office during Reconstruction than there is in 2022, ladies and gentlemen. That's a huge deal. There's only been one black governor of Louisiana. One in the history of federal government in Louisiana. And guess what? He was not allowed to take office even though the majority black population of Louisiana voted him in. Since then, have we had a black governor of Louisiana? No, we have not. Now, there's lots of reasons for that, but we'll come to that. With that being said, when we talk about Reconstruction, okay, it lasts for about 10 years. After Reconstruction, what type of laws went into effect in the South? Jim Crow laws, write it down. Jim Crow laws are going to go into place, and it's all about segregation. And they justify the implementation of these laws by using the argument of states' rights. Okay, segregation is argued for based on states' rights. It is the states' right to implement things that would keep their population safe. Okay, so Reconstruction ends, Jim Crow era rises. Jim Crow era is going to implement separation or segregation. The 14th Amendment is going to be implemented. Okay, it's already on paper, but no one is using it correctly until the 1960s. Then it is going to be supported by Supreme Court cases. The 14th Amendment, when it's put on the books, is ignored for a long time. Okay, there we go. Quick, questions about 14th? There's a really interesting Netflix special, and this is before Will Smith smacked Chris Rock, so he was still popular and people liked him. It's like 6 episodes long. It's really, really interesting about the nuances of the 14th Amendment and how it's been used to improve the quality of our lives, even though it was ignored really for the first 75 years of its existence, as it was, you know. All right, 15th. 15th Amendment, if you look at it, it is all about, 15th is also part of post-Civil War. It says, the United States vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any other state on account of race, color, or previous conditions of servitude. This is trying to give everyone equal access, except who? Women, yeah. I'm still property of my husband at this point. So, it is trying to spread out the voting, and you should know this, to all men. Men. Because us women are too dumb to vote. So, it is only to all men. Black men, Asian men, Mexican, Hispanic, men. 16th Amendment. Okay? Congress levy taxes, income. We don't care about that. We're not covering that this week. 17th Amendment, saying that we're voting for our senators directly. We're not dealing with that this week. We'll deal with it later. 18th Amendment is prohibition. We're not touching that this week. 19th Amendment we are dealing with. Here we go. So, of your 11 on the back, which ones do you absolutely have to know? So far there's 2. Give me one of them, Andrew.
13,
No.
14.
Well, how many are you going to go through? Which one do you absolutely need to know? Jillian? 14th is the big one. 19th is the other big one. Now, you should know, be aware, that 13, 14, and 15 are what, Andrew? 13, 14, and 50 are what? It's not that cute. Here we go. What do you got, Matthew? Co-Civil War. Okay, 19th Amendment, ladies and gentlemen. This is what is giving women the right to vote. When is it passed? 1920. It's the 19th Amendment. It was passed in the 20th century. 1920 is how I remember it. Okay, it's passed in 1920, officially ratified in 21, but 1920s, 2021, is perfectly fine. This is what gives women the right to vote. So finally, ladies, we're not straight up property. Now, with that being said, ladies, you don't get to have your own bank account until 1957. So we still got 30 more years until we can get a bank account without our husband's name on it, or your daddy's name. So here we are. Okay, 19th Amendment. You need to know that the Equal Rights Amendment is going to be strengthened by legislation and Supreme Court cases as well. So if I'm telling you the legislative branch and Supreme Court cases had to interfere, is it strong enough to stand on its own? No. Okay? You will see with civil rights laws that it has to be reinforced by Supreme Court cases and legislative laws. Because people don't like change. Can we agree? Hello? Okay, have you seen in your short lives, you've seen Republicans, Democrats hold the highest offices in the land, yes? Goes back and forth. With that being said, it is very hard to get a consistent change in one direction going either way, which is both positive and negative. But when we talk about civil rights, it's typically one that has to be reinforced by Supreme Court cases and legislative mess. Yes?
No, I was just gonna ask how it was strengthened.
Supreme Court cases and legislative. Okay. Perfect. So, now, when we are talking about the 19th Amendment, I do want you to know the Equal Rights Amendment, which is what amendment? Equal Rights is which amendment? 14th. Okay, the 14th Amendment and Title IX are going to improve women's power.
What's Title
Have a good
IX?
day. Title IX is why women have sports in high school. Why we get to get college scholarships too.
My test this morning supposed to go in that box? Okay.
No, it goes in the one that says drop off, dude.